All right, I think we'll get this started. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you've all been enjoying the first day of CompCon today, and congratulations to making it this far. Yeah, I know it is just before 5 o'clock, and these days can sometimes get a bit tiring, but I do thank you all for hanging around to listen to our wonderful panel here. So my name's Matthew Rossi, and I'll be chairing this panel, so to speak. I'll sort of start off with a bit of an introduction of what we're trying to achieve with this panel today and how I'm going to run it. So basically, the IT industry has never had a more diverse set of disciplines for budding entrants to enter, and a diverse range of sectors and work environments in which to seek employment from or to start a business in. However, for many students, successfully identifying and pursuing their chosen career path can be a daunting process. In this session, we have assembled a panel of IT recruiters and relatively recent graduates from the startup, SME, enterprise and government sectors, many of whom have and will give talks over the course of this weekend. Our panel here will provide insights on the experiences that have helped them in their study careers, and will also answer your questions. So this session will be split up into two parts. The first being around making the most of your time at university, and the second being around career planning. I've prepared a few topics for our panellists to discuss, and each panelist will have a couple of minutes to speak. If you do have any questions, please raise your hand in between questions, and I will find you and invite the panellists to answer them. We'll also open up the floor to questions at the end of each section. And on top of that, in order to make this as interactive as humanly possible, I will also do my best to follow Twitter during this panel session. If you'd like to tweet a question, please ping our Twitter handle on the screen so I will see the notification. Which is good. So first off, I think it would be a good idea to introduce all of us. I'll briefly introduce myself and I'll pass it around to our panel. I currently work for Queensland Shared Services in the Queensland Government, which is a division that mostly focuses on offering finance and HR services to government agencies within Queensland Government. I went to Melbourne Uni, did a science degree in IT and a diploma in Italian, and then through that time I was involved in my faculty student society. I was president there, and then I co-founded UniHack Melbourne there as well, and I've also been involved with CompCon over the last couple of years. So probably the first start, who has a microphone in their hand? Awesome. Would one of you like to actually talk into it to see if it's on? If not...
Testing.
Perfect.
It sounds like it's
working. You can go first.
Testing. Check.
I guess I'll start. I think most people are in my talk here, I think. Doesn't look like many people have moved, but I'm Josh Holmes. I'm currently studying at Griffith Uni, about to graduate shortly, and I double degree IT multimedia. I've also been involved in various student clubs and such at the uni, including Studio 39, which I co-founded. And I think everyone sort of knows that I've worked around at CommBank in Sydney for an internship and at Telstra. Yeah.
Good afternoon, I'm Joel Addison, currently work at Technology One. Prior to that I was here at UQ doing a degree in software and aerospace engineering, and was heavily involved in some of the clubs here, so the Electrical Engineering Student Society and UQ Computing Society, involved in the exec of both of them. And so yeah, hopefully I can give you some clues today.
Hi, I'm Harold Liu. So my official job title is Software Engineering Talent Scout at Just Digital People. I graduated from UQ with psychology, and so I've since fallen into the recruitment world. I focus on basically finding and meeting primarily software engineers across a whole bunch of programming languages and whatnot. So yeah.
World famous as the legendary recruiter, Josh Wulf is the only recruiter to ever appear simultaneously on the front page of the Register, Computer World, and the Norwegian IT Times. I work at Just Digital People during the day. In the evening, I'm the founder of Magic Craft. We're a startup that teaches kids how to code using the metaphor of magic and Minecraft. 10 years at Red Hat, wrote 10 books, 6 of them on programming, coding since the 80s. That's my son Prahlad up the back, he's 13. That's where we started the kids programming kind of thing.
got to do a much, much longer intro of myself this morning, but I'm a software engineer. My name's Jacinta, and I also enjoy teaching people how to program. It's a lot of fun.
Hey, some of you may remember me for asking you to close your eyes frequently last presentation. I'm Ducky. I am from Tasmania, and I'm currently studying with RMIT, but I also work for a startup-y kind of thing. It's a web agency. We make websites. It's great. I'm mostly a back-end developer, but learn front-end as I go. I'm also really involved in a lot of communities. So I've always been involved in a lot of student societies. I was previously a president of my own student society at UTAS, which I previously studied at. And I've been involved in a lot of startup committees. I just helped launch an innovation hub, and I do a lot of stuff with the games community, especially in Tasmania. So I really love games, and I like making games. Maybe you'll see one released from me one day.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, guys. So the first section that we're to look at today is making the most of your time at university, and I'll jump into the first question I have here. So a bit of a background. University students and recent graduates are faced with a plethora of areas to focus on, whether it be software development, business analysis, data analytics, infrastructure management, project management, among many others. What do you think? So should a university student decide what disciplines to initially specialise in while still at uni, and if so, how do you come to make that kind of a decision? Who'd like to go first?
I'm holding a microphone, so I guess I'll go first. So, making the most of your time at university and specialising. See, I'm one of these people who cannot decide what they love the most. I love so many things. Like, I try to narrow it down to like human-computer interaction, geographic information systems, and games, but like even within those areas, they're super broad. So I probably don't have the best advice for this, but I also think that maybe if you have lots of things you're interested in, that's good. I think it's really important to be across the board, like kind of learning from lots of different industries and subjects, and not to siloize yourself too much, because learning from something outside your box can actually help you solve problems from within your box and approach them in a different way, a way that some other people might not already be doing it. And I think that especially comes into play with startups and things and approaching problems from a new kind of direction. So yeah, I think you don't have to specialize if you don't want to. That said, if you want to specialize, go for it. If that's what you're really interested in, that is awesome. And I am super envious of you, because I would love to be able to focus on just one thing sometimes.
So I agree with most of that. Above all, I would say study the thing that you're most excited by. If you really, really love data analytics, then study that. If you want to know more about testing and debugging and maintaining code, study that. However, if you are like, which one is going to set me up best for industry, which is also a valid approach to take, I do quite appreciate the study broadly, go deeper when you know what you need. But if you want some advice from me for pick 3, I would say project management, because it really, really helps to know how a project is run, even if you don't end up in a lead position yourself. Data analytics, because we're going to do more and more fun stuff with big data over the next, in the immediate term, but for many years into the future. And software engineering, knowing how it all hangs together and how to run a project on top of the project management is something that an awfully large number of businesses want out of you.
So who among you were here this morning for that session that talked about how to choose what to learn, which technologies to learn? Who was here in that session? Okay, I missed that one. What was the one thing that you got out of that? Who can say? Boom, you just got it right there. If you want to be mediocre in life, then just do a whole lot of different things. But look, everybody comes out of university with a generalist kind of IT degree, but nobody is coming to me as a recruiter and saying, find me a generalist IT person. They all come and say, get me a JavaScript programmer, get me a C# programmer, get me a Python developer, like that. And, you know, I run this reality TV show called the JDP Internship. It's the world's #1 software development reality show. We're looking at changing the name this season to So You Think You Can Code. It's in its 2nd season, coming up to the 3rd. Go onto YouTube and look it up. Now, what I do in there is I have 3, 4, 5 different interns in, and we get different guests in every week from the industry, software development managers, devs, consultants. And one of the questions that's come out over and over again is it better to be a jack of all trades or a master of one? And out of all of the episodes, there are over 60 of them. You can watch them through. There have been 2 people who have said from the industry to be a jack of all trades. Everybody else said, go deep first into one thing, and then take what you've got in depth and apply it to different languages. So I'm going to take a kind of a counterpoint there and say, go deep on one thing.
For me, I suppose the thing that I hear most from developers who are a bit more on the younger side is that none of them really know what they want to do, even then. And so I think for me, that mostly seems to come from the fact that they haven't tried anything. They kind of dabble in bits and pieces, but they don't really have an idea of what anything is like because they haven't tried it. So I guess it's kind of one of those things where you don't know what you don't know. I think it should be less about figuring out what you want to do and maybe exploring a lot of things and figuring out what you definitely don't want to do, and then go from there, because it's a lot easier to figure out to start with what you want to do and expand on those than to actually find yourself doing something that you don't want to do and then 10 years into it trying to get out of that. So yeah, look, try everything and then go from there and figure out what you don't want to do.
So from my point of view, when you're at university, you're there doing a whole lot of different courses. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, but I want to learn this latest new language or this latest framework or something like that, and they're disappointed that their university courses doesn't teach that. So for example, one of the courses that I tutor still come back to UQ tutoring, and we use Subversion as version control. And the question that we get asked every single time is, why are we still using this ancient thing called Subversion? Why aren't we using Git? And the answer is always, we don't really care what the system is. We're just trying to teach you the technology, how it works, so that you can apply this concept to any other thing. And that's the main benefit that you get out of doing something at university. Take what you've learned in any language that they tell you to use. Doesn't really matter what it is. At the end of the day, it's a concept that you can apply anywhere. And that's certainly what I've done when I've gone to my job. I knew no C# before starting there. But you can apply all the knowledge you've gained from the other languages straight away to know how to actually do that language. You'll be surprised at what you can do from that.
So talking about specializations at university is probably not the place to do it. You're not, generally speaking, you're not going to specialize at university. You're going to do that more or less when you're in industry, when you know what you want to do. From a university perspective, and coming from numerous people I've spoken to in industry, one thing that keeps coming up and that I agree with is getting good T-shaped skills. So does anyone know what a T-shaped skill is, or have heard a term similar to that before? One? Yeah? So basically what it is knowing quite a bit about a lot of things across the top and specializing down into skills that you enjoy and that you want to do. Benefit of that is, especially, everywhere, in a startup or in becoming an employee somewhere, is that you're going to know more about what the teams are doing around you and therefore what you need to do. E.g., if you're a software developer, you're going to know what the UX and UI guys are doing. You're going to know what the everyone else that needs to work with you are doing as well. So it makes it easier on yourself. And when you're looking, or if you look for a grad job, most grad roles go for 2 years, and you go through 3 different rotations, and you try different things out. So I think the specialization thing isn't something you should be panicked about at university.
All right, thank you very much. I'll briefly jump in as well, for at least from my experience. I've been pretty fortunate in the jobs I've had since I've left uni. I've been able to try a few different things. I've my first job out of uni, I was working as a bit part Python developer, working with SQLite databases and massage data, and I joined the Queensland government. I ended up in various strategy and enterprise architecture roles. I think it's a good thing if you are able to do that within a work setting to get a broad experience of different things and to sort of go through that process of elimination, as Harold talked about as well. At least that's something I found valuable from my perspective. So does anybody have any questions at this stage? Okay. Looking at whether nothing's come up as well, so I think we can move on to the next question then. So this next question goes a little bit more into what Josh raised in his answer about T-shaped skills. So much discussion in the recruitment space talks about the need for budding graduates to come out with the right mix of soft and hard skills gained from things like building a portfolio in GitHub to focusing on extracurricular activities and that kind of thing. I guess my question is sort of a bit of a two-part question. The first part is what can students do now to prepare to enter the university, and how can you sort of judge what the best sort of pursuits are given the sort of the widespread choices that exist? If that makes any sense. Who'd like to go first?
I'll go first.
All right.
I think that Josh's talk, the other Josh, great name by the way, was amazing, and it's wonderful that it's been recorded because you can watch that over and over again. And look, I'm clear that today we're speaking to the top 1% of people in terms of your interest, your activity, and just the depth of what came out in that talk and how targeted that information was. If you just took that and did that, that would just like nail it right there. And you know, one of the kind of themes that I can hear coming out here is, you know, Donald, I don't know how you pronounce his last name, Donald Knuth or something? Do you know how to pronounce that? K-N-U-T-H? Knuth? Donald Knuth, yeah. Well, he says that premature optimization is the root of all evil. And, you know, how do you know what's the right thing to do? Well, it's the only thing that comes with experience. And you can get it two ways. You can get it through your own experience, or you can get it from other people's experience. And one of the things that I really appreciated about Josh's talk was how much of that was just like tapping into deep wells of experience of other people and taking like, what's the one thing that this person, Brad Feldman, Ashton Kutcher, the others have said that like the pivotal point, the one thing that if you took it. So you can get it from other people's experience by tapping into the right people. And the other way you can get it is by just accelerating your own experience, like doing tons of stuff. Like obviously being careful of your mental health, like Ducky was talking about, not coding for 48 hours straight, you know, on a regular basis. But look, coding for 48 hours straight it's a good thing to do at least once, you know, to figure out. You can learn anything in 48 hours, and then you can decide whether you like it or not, and then throw it away. But if there was one thing that I was going to do out of everything I've seen here today, I would get that talk by Josh from earlier, the video that's going to be coming out, and I'd just watch that and just do everything that's in there.
That's a pretty good answer, I suppose. Just go back and watch that. Yeah, that was almost what I was going to say, is go back. I talked about it for half an hour, what you should be doing. Doing stuff, just going out there and doing something, and not being afraid of doing it. The GovHack Gold Coast Spirit of GovHack winner went to a guy who wasn't going to go to GovHack because he was basically afraid that he wasn't going to know enough and he'd look stupid in front of everybody, and he hasn't been here long enough, he doesn't know anyone, and so he sort of didn't want to do it. Talked him into going to it, his team ended up winning one of our prize categories. So it's about just getting out there, meeting new people, learning new things, and just giving it a go. Because someone said before, you don't know what you don't know. Absolutely. Maybe you might be good at something that you haven't heard about yet because you haven't experienced it. So just go and do some stuff.
So for me, my experience, I did not do a whole lot of projects on the side, and if you look at my GitHub account, you'll find some uni assignments from when I was tutoring and stuff like that. So that's really not useful to a recruiter at all, probably. I don't really know, and I don't really care. For me, I was involved with various community things, so I'm now president of Humbug, which is the Brisbane Unix users group, basically. I've gone to things like LinuxConf.au and PyCon as a volunteer, and that's been really helpful because it just means that I get to know other people and get some experience in that regard. So going into an interview, I would look really bad if they were just going to look at my GitHub or something like that, but I'd hope that I could go in there and say, look, I've got this experience from having done this, this, and this, and I certainly find that a lot more useful. Like going to the UQCS hackathon, for example, it was really good for me just to go and see what people were doing now. So turning up this year to that, there's first year students doing things that I wouldn't have thought of doing, and it was great to see them actually getting out there and doing that. I don't really care if that doesn't go up in GitHub later or whatever else, but I know that they can actually give it a go and they're going to do that. So teamwork, skills like that, to me, are more important than how well you can code, but that's me personally.
I'll jump in here. I actually agree entirely with you. As far as extracurricular activities go, do what you love. Don't do something because you think that it will look better on your resume, it will look better in GitHub. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. Except maybe walking or other form of exercise. You probably should do something that gets you outside occasionally. With respect to looking good to recruiters, if you have a good enough reputation, which you may not have right now as a student, but give it a few years. If you go to conferences, if you help out, if you run conferences, if you get to know people, you give talks, you act as speaker liaison, you do all of those kind of things, there's a really good chance that recruiters are going to be contacting you. You're not going to be contacting them. You don't need to have the most shiny GitHub repository if you have an awesome reputation as someone who people want to hire. Now, not everyone will have that, of course, but that is one thing that you can choose to do. It's the route that I went down. I haven't actually responded to a job advert for the last, or any of those kind of things for the last 18 years. And I have worked the occasional year or two here as full-time contracts for that kind of thing. It can be awesome fun. Looking at Seek is a little bit more demoralizing. Talking directly to the recruiters is much more fun. But it's an option. You don't have to do stuff you don't want to. Do stuff that you love. That passion about stuff is what's going to make other people want to talk to you.
I guess on the GitHub thing, so part of my job is crafting those job ads that everyone sees, and I've taken to consistently asking people to include a link to their GitHub and their Stack accounts. Now, when people do that, and I go on there and I do check every single one of them, I see people who have, 2 contributions in September 2015, and that's it. That's kind of missed the point. We look at those not necessarily to look at the quality of your code or whatever. It's more to get an idea of what you're interested in and what you're passionate in. If you don't have anything on your GitHub, that's fine. But if I ask you about, what kind of meetups you're going to, what are you interested in at the moment, if you can't tell me anything, it kind of shows that, you say that you want to do something, but you're not really doing it. And this applies to basically, people of all experiences, but the thing, I guess, that kind of separates graduates and junior people is that you don't quite have the technical knowledge to stand on, so really what everyone wants to see is your enthusiasm and your openness to learn, and that's going to come out of what you're doing in your own time, whether that is, contributing to your GitHub or answering questions in Stack or going to meetups. The point of all that stuff isn't necessarily for the objective and the hard gain out of it. It's to kind of demonstrate that this is what you're interested in, and that regardless of whether you're getting paid to do it, you're doing it because that's what you want to do, and that's what people want to see.
Yeah, I basically think the same, is that I think enthusiasm speaks a lot, and maybe I say that because I can come off as a very enthusiastic person, but it's definitely, personally, it's really been good for me. So my current job is in web development. I'd literally never even taken a web development course. I'd never made a website really. I looked at a Django Girls website workshop once and that was about it. But because I went to like lots of local meetups and seemed to be an enthusiastic person, when I wanted a job, like my boss heard, my now boss, who was like a person in the community then, and he was like, you're cool, do you want a job? And I'm like, I know nothing about web development, I'm sorry. And he's like, that's okay, I've seen what you could like, I've seen that you do things, I've seen that you're enthusiastic, and you are really interested in things, and I think we could train you. And I think that plays a big role in a lot of things. And like, even back to the last question, just knowing a lot about one thing, which like, especially in programming languages, I do agree with. I think like soft skills and things should definitely be across the board though. Just like knowing that one thing makes you so much more trainable in other things. Once you know one thing really well that's similar to things like in programming languages, it's really easy to kind of move that across. And I mean, maybe I was lucky because I knew Python and the web agency I work for uses Django, so they were like, well, you know, you're probably trainable. But definitely think enthusiasm played a part, very big part for me in several of my job interviews. Yeah.
All right, thanks guys. Give me one moment. All right, so I'll just take the opportunity now to ask whether anyone here has any questions. Yep, down the back.
For us, most of us being students here, and you guys are talking about how those extra experiences that you have on the side, from launching your GitHub account to having extracurricular activities, would help you get a job later on or get noticed by recruiters. How does it stack up with actual university work and having a degree at the end? Because most of us will be working towards a degree, and you're putting the fact that having those extracurricular activities are as important as having the degree itself. And just having a quick look at the Tech One Seek advertisement for the internship, saying that they would need a great transcript from you from university and having at least a 5.0 GPA and being able to apply to the internship itself. How does it stack up compared to being really good at programming, like at a certain programming language? Let's say that you're really good at Python, you're really good at JavaScript and whatnot, and how does it stack up to having an actual degree and actual really good grades at university?
That's a, sorry.
I was going to say the same thing as you. That's a great question.
That's a really great question, and I'm so glad someone asked it. I totally wanted to say that in my last answer and forgot. Yeah, everyone tells you to have all these side projects and things. I'm like, I'm still a student as well. I just work part-time, and it can be really difficult to manage, and trying to have projects on the side on top of that is really hard. Like, if you go to my GitHub account, you will see very little activity. Not just because sometimes I don't use GitHub, I use other things, but just because like I don't have time for those side projects. One thing to counteract that I've noticed a lot of universities have been doing in some courses is making some of your assignments be on GitHub. So like you have your assignments there, and like so people can see your activity that way. But I don't think you have to have lots of projects necessarily. Like, if you can show that you're enthusiastic and you're interested in that in other ways, like through your university work, I think that's just as good. And if you want to maintain a really great grade point average, good for you. Like, you should definitely try and do that. But also, I don't think those sorts of requirements on a job ad should stop you applying for a job. I've noticed that if you just apply for things anyway, it can work out. I've had personal experience in this. Like, I've applied for quite a few scholarships and things that I thought I had no way of getting because of various like qualifications I didn't have, and I ended up getting a lot of them. So that's always very exciting. So yeah, that's kind of my recommendation. Don't let those sorts of requirements hold you back from applying for things. If you want that job, you should definitely apply for it. I'm sure if you think you can be good for that job, or you can be trained well into that job, and you think you can show it in other ways other than what they've like asked for in their job ad, I think that could work out in many circumstances. I'm sure the recruiters will be able to tell you more about that.
I'd like to speak to that too, yeah.
On the way past, I just want to quickly say, your degree matters probably more than a lot of this. It used not to as much in my experience. I know a lot of people who are about my age and a little older but only by a year or two, who didn't finish their uni degree because they got employed first, and they never went back and finished it. But these days, that piece of paper is possibly one of the most important pieces for the next 5-ish years, and then hopefully from there you can carry it. So do the extracurricular activities if you have time, if you have the space, if your life lets you, if you love them, but I would definitely say value the reason that you're at the university to start with.
Cool. Yeah, look, I can hear that we're falling into this kind of false dichotomy of like having a balanced life. Like you've got to have your university, then you've got to have your extracurricular activities. Here's the thing, man. People hire for attitude and then they train for skills, and you can't pay someone to be enthusiastic about something. Like, if you find what it is that you're enthusiastic about, and it's pretty clear to me you're enthusiastic about programming and coding, or you wouldn't be here on a Saturday doing this, right? And so you want to look for where your natural enthusiasm is and how you can align that with your university studies and what you're doing, and just do more of it than anyone else is doing. You've got to find that thing that you can put yourself into easily without, you know, a whole lot of effort that it's really hard for you. And as you do that, just be deliberate about creating evidence for it somehow, so that when you rock up, you can, you know, you've never met this person before, they don't know you, you have a reputation somehow. They can go online, they can Google you. When I was hired at Red Hat in 2004, Marty Messer said to me, you're stepping into the future here, you're going to be working in open source, and everything that you do, all your commits are going to be visible on Google, and Google will be your CV. In the future, you won't have a resume, people just Google your name, and then they'll find it. And you really want to be just looking at that. How can I do what I'm naturally enthusiastic about, create evidence for it, and then I'll tell you what, you'll find someone who will pay you to do it, and you don't need to worry too much about, you know, the grades or the university degree or any of that kind of stuff, just like Jacinta was saying. When I went to Just Digital People, and I rolled in there and said, hey, I want to do recruiting, and Jason Ralston said to me, no way, man. We had an old guy in here before. He thought he knew everything. He wouldn't listen. You know, I told him, call this guy, you know, and talk to him about this job. And the guy said to me, nah, he wouldn't want that job. And just wouldn't do it, like he thought he already knew. So he said, no, we don't want any old guys in here. You're a developer. You've been a manager. Just not cut out for it. So I just said to him, look, this is what I want to do. I want to make $1 million a month, and there's no way I'm going to do it as a developer. I need to do a startup. It means I need to be around people who are hustling, who are doing sales, contracts, negotiations, recruiting, all that kind of stuff. That's why I want to be here. So he said to me, look, I'll tell you what we'll do. Why don't you come in for a week? You can sit here, you can listen to us making some calls, maybe make a few calls yourself, and we'll buy you lunch. So I said, okay, I'll see you tomorrow morning. And he says, no, well, look, it's 2. We need to get some stuff set up. We'll see you in a week's time. So then I rocked up, and I worked for free for a week, and I just burned up the phones, talking to developers, talking to businesses, placed someone into a job, and then they just started paying me for it. I just looked for the thing that was connected to what I wanted to do in life, what I was naturally enthusiastic at, and just went for it. You can't pay people to be enthusiastic. So just find what you're enthusiastic about and create evidence for it.
I guess just to backtrack a little bit and talk about that applying to jobs and stuff that you're not necessarily qualified for. I do get that a lot as well. I get people who apply for jobs that they are qualified for. And one of the things I'm going to ask you is, why this? And regardless of whether you're qualified for it or not, if your answer to that is, I just want a job, it's not going to cut it. If you're a PHP developer who applies for a C++ job, I'm going to be curious as to why it is that you want to do it and why it is you think you can do it. The whether you have the experiences and whatnot, it's sort of important, but at the same time, if you have a good reason for it and you can show that, you know, you back yourself, you know, it's going to be a conversation that's at least going to be had. And so I think as far as the qualifications thing, being able to explain why it is you want to do it and being able to demonstrate that you are definitely passionate about doing it, it's probably more important than you might think it actually is.
We were in my talk 3:30, so I sort of raised this briefly. One of the things is everybody is in the same boat. So I'm studying a double degree, so in fact I'm doing more work than some of my counterparts that are just doing their single degree, and everybody's super busy. Also got a part-time job because I live out of home now. Other people that I'm at uni with also work. So everybody's sort of in that same boat. So on one hand, as I said, and as one of the quotes or a couple of the quotes sort of mentioned, the recruiters are looking beyond your degree because everyone that's applying has the degree. So it's trying to find that spare couple of hours a week, which is really not much at all. You know, you might watch Netflix every night for, you know, a couple of episodes and it quickly racks up time. So if you can put some of that time per week into just developing yourself, your personal branding. You know, it doesn't have to be literally developing software. It can just be doing something, going to a meetup, as I sort of said, River City Labs in Brisbane. I know getting over there or sort of all the time adds up, but just getting out there and doing something puts you ahead of everyone straight away. And then obviously, just because that says you need one thing shouldn't stop you from applying necessarily. And then, excuse me, then beyond that, obviously, if you've got that those extra things that you've been doing, then it's going to just look awesome, and it's going to show that you've got the commitment, you've got the dedication, and that you're not about just doing the bare minimum to get somewhere.
All right, thank you.
I have something else to say. So I feel like we've been very much heavy on the not uni as much, but like sometimes you don't know what you want to do outside of uni. Like there's so many areas you could like look into and be enthusiastic about that you just don't know which one to choose, or maybe you're just not sure about anything. And I think there's a lot you can do just within your uni work itself. So like maybe it's just extending some of your assignments just that little bit further, or some of my most, like the projects I'm most proud of have come from university. So maybe just putting them on GitHub or just getting them out there a bit, or yeah, just extending what you can from there. So you don't have to look too hard to find a project that you can work like that little bit extra harder on at uni. Because sometimes you will have hobbies and things you want to do that don't seem like they're related to tech at all. So maybe finding those few hours a week can be super hard because you're super into sports or something and you want to train every day for that. So I totally understand if it's really hard to balance having projects and university, because we're all pretty passionate about what we do. So it can't all be our entire life. So yeah, hopefully just doing some extending more university projects also helps.
Sorry, Joel, did you want to jump in as well?
Yeah, so one thing that I hear a lot from students is around group projects and how they're so terrible and we shouldn't do them and so on. They're actually really valuable, and you might think that they're completely useless, but they're actually setting you up for later life in a big way that you might not realize now. So working with those team members that you don't think are actually pulling their weight, yeah, turns out that when you get a job, there'll be people like that as well, and that'll probably be you at some point as well. So don't beg them the whole time, because there'll be some point where you're really busy and you can't get it all done either, but they're going to pick it up. So put a lot of effort into the team projects, because one thing that a lot of companies will ask you about is a project that you've worked on, and especially in a group situation, because they want to see how you can fit in at a team at their company. So when you're doing one of these team project courses at uni, actually spend some time getting to know the people in your group, see how the dynamics work, and set yourself up so that when someone asks you about a project, it doesn't really matter if you don't have the experience of a project outside of uni. You've got one of these projects from uni that you can talk about, and people are quite happy to hear about that, because university projects can be quite tough, and if you can show that you've done quite a good job in that, and you've shown that you understand how it all works, then they're going to take that to be really valuable experience as well.
All right, thank you. I'll make a brief contribution there. I've found that, at least from the extracurriculars I did, that I found that I was able to get all of those sort of life lessons that John mentioned that could come out of a group project as well. I would admit, has also helped me in some of the interviews I've had. I would say that I think one conclusion that we can come out of this discussion is that there isn't really any silver bullet in terms of how you can approach this. And bear in mind that there's also a need for many people to juggle a lot of other commitments that they just need to do. Maybe they have a part-time job that helps them finance their existence while they're studying and such. So there's also room for people to sort of look at being plucky about it and how can they make the most of what they're doing right now, even if there are still commitments in there in front of them as well. So thank you very much for that. I'll move on to to the next section around career planning, and mindful that I'm going over time a bit. Okay, I'll jump straight into this, and I'll be a bit harsher on time. So the first question I have is, how does someone decide what sector and work environment they want to target to join a company, get a job and such? Would any particular type of employee be beneficial to start a career at? How do you then sort of plan from there?
Sorry, what was the question again?
So I'll narrow it down. So how does someone decide what sector and work environment that they want to target as for when they look at their job search or whether they want to start a company?
I got you. So one really good thing is internships. Some of them you can only apply for in your second last year. Other ones are just open to any student, any year level. Unfortunately, most of them have closed now for summer, so look out early next year. But that's really useful information because you get to go and trial the workplace with no commitments, and then generally they'll offer you a job at the end as well. Bonus. So I went and worked down in Sydney for 10 weeks at the bank, CompCon, and in the UX UI field because I hadn't really done any work in there before, but I liked doing that sort of thing. I like design, so I thought, why not give it a go? And financial services, never done anything with them before. I have money in a bank account, like that's all I know. So why not go and try something? So yeah, I would say internships are super awesome. And if you're interested in the startup field, go down to River City Labs or any co-working space, go up to one of the founders and say, hey, need a hand with anything? And they will say, yes, please. And so you can help out there as well. And then that not only is part-time work, but it's experience. So, it's sort of all in one there.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Just check. So, I don't know, it's hard to say exactly. When I was looking around for things, I didn't have any particular goal in mind. That is probably what a lot of recruiters hear as well. They've just got someone looking for a job. But for me, I looked into a couple of different companies. I found some that looked interesting, looked at what they were doing, and applied, and it worked out fairly well. But in saying that, along the way, when you're doing degrees and so on, you sort of get to know, as we've been saying so far, you get to have a feel of an area that you're interested in, and you can then just start looking at companies that do work in that sort of field. And that helps you to work out whether what they're doing is something that you're interested in or not. For me, I'm at Technology One, an enterprise software company. I didn't think I'd be interested in enterprise software at all. However, once I got to know what they were doing, I realized just how much fun it would be, and so I'm really enjoying the job now, and have done since day one starting there. But before that, if I looked at enterprise software, I just would have gone, no, don't want to do anything to do with that. So broaden your horizons and just look at what is out there. Don't assume that everything that you've heard about a particular industry is actually what that company is doing, because you'll find that it's probably not the case.
I'll triple the suggestion for companies offering an internship. Also throw this out there, if you do decide to chase after a startup, perhaps one that already exists, or start one of your own, probably want to start on your own after you start work elsewhere for a little while though. If you do decide to chase after that, whilst now is a great time in your life to be working 100-hour weeks, maybe think hard about whether or not you want to be working 100-hour weeks before you go into a startup which has that kind of culture. Not all of them do, but once you start working 100-hour weeks or 80-hour weeks or even 60-hour weeks, and you make a habit of doing that for them, if you ever try to push back down to 40-hour weeks, which you might need to do because mental health is really important, there will be certain expectations of you to carry on as you started. They're a lot of fun, they're absolutely exhausting. I'm just saying, do pay attention to that aspect of the culture before you do that, so it's a conscious decision on your behalf.
The whole I don't know what to do thing, it's like, if someone shows up and says that to me, I'm like, well, what do you do with your time? Like, you know, I don't know whether I want to do Angular or React. Well, have you coded 48 hours straight in Angular or 48 hours straight in React? No, what do? You like watch Netflix? Like, you can have your life turn out one or two ways. You can just have it turn out however it turns out, and then have like all the reasons, justifications, excuses of why it turned out the way it did. Or you can take matters into your own hand and create it the way that you want. Now, you probably don't know what you want, right? That's the main thing for especially grads. They come in. I'm like, hey, I'm a genie. I just came out of a bottle. You got 3 wishes. What job do you want? Where do you want it? How much? Doing what? With who? And most people cannot tell me. When I went to work for Red Hat, I was in South America and Peru. I lived there for 3 years. My son was born. He was a year and a half old, and it was like, we've got to go somewhere that's safer. Guy around the back of our place took out his life savings, $3,000 US. Some guys jumped him on the way out of the bank, and he refused to give them the money, so they shot him 5 times in the head. And I was just like, I'd been there 3 years, I was like, okay, I get it, man. The guy wouldn't give you the money, you shoot him, straight up, fair. But what, in the head, 5 times? I was like, okay, we've got to move somewhere else. So we're going to move somewhere else. I get sponsored to come to Australia, but I'm thinking, like, where do I want to work now? I used to be a Windows developer, Windows system administrator. I was like, I don't want to work with Microsoft anymore. I remember Slashdot, those guys, Red Hat, open source. I want to get into that. So I go buy a book, and I buy a CD, and I install it on my machine. Now, when I was a Windows system administrator, I had time on my hands, and you got time on your hands, man. If I check your Google browsing history, your Netflix account, all of that, like you're spending time somewhere on something. And I was, as a Windows system administrator, reading Slashdot, and I read about Linux. I installed it on a machine. I got 2 network cards working, stuck it into the data center there. I had the IP chains firewall bridging the 2 interfaces, but it wouldn't survive a reboot. So every time the machine rebooted, the whole network would go offline until I keyed the codes back in. Then I went to South America. About 6 months later, I get an email saying, hey, what's the password for that Linux machine? The network has stopped working.
We'll be able to wrap it up.
Sure. It's a bit of a long, hairy dog story. But the point here is that what I did is I just put energy and time into something. If you don't know what you want to do, it's because you haven't spent enough time discovering it by doing enough stuff. Like Josh keeps making the point, go out and do stuff. Go to meetups. Like a guy yesterday called me, he hasn't found a job in 5 months. I said, how many meetups you been to? None. And I was like, I got a job and I went to 2 last night. But you got to just do a lot of stuff till you discover what you really want to do. And once you understand where you want to work, I can definitely help you to get the job. And if you're looking for an internship, the JDP internship, we will not only give you real world experience, but we'll make you internet famous.
I guess you've probably picked up by now, the common theme is to just try everything out. Get out there and just do something with your time that isn't just sitting on the couch. Because sooner or later, you're going to figure out what you want to do. And regardless of what that is, as long as you put energy into doing that, someone is going to eventually want to pay you to do it. Nowadays, I mean, when we talk about jobs, we don't call them jobs, we call them opportunities. And the point of that is, we look at these jobs, per se, as more of an opportunity for you to capitalize on what you're already doing, enjoying doing, and build on it. These companies don't want to pay someone to learn if they want to do something or not. They want you to pay. They want to pay you to do what you're already doing. It's just that they want you to do it for them. The company is just there to give you access to resources and people and give you a direction, to channel your interests into doing something that's profitable for them. That's the point of the job. They don't want someone to come in and just do the 8 to 5 or whatever and just clock out, go home, watch Netflix for 3 hours and do it again. And I guess to avoid that, it's really only going to become possible if you actually figure out what you want to do, or at the very least, figure out what you don't want to do and avoid that. So in a roundabout way, yeah, go out, go to meetups, do stuff in your own time, just figure out what you want to do.
Yeah, as a lot of people have said, try things, do things. Don't be too afraid if like you try something and it doesn't work out. Like that's gonna happen. It happens all the time. Internships, as Josh and other people were saying, are really good opportunities as well. And we're in Australia, so generally you'll get paid during them, which is a bonus as a student. And yeah, trying things, as everyone has said, is pretty good. Some like personal recommendations, like going to things like hackathons and games jams and stuff, if you're interested in games, are sometimes really good ways of figuring out things that you don't like doing really fast, because it's like an intense period, and you kind of work out, I like doing this and I really hate doing that part, so let's just avoid that. So definitely finding things you don't want to do is always a good option. And yeah, trying to explore things at university as much as you can, because at university you have access to these great resources. They're like usually your lecturers and tutors, and they have a wealth of knowledge and experience that they can draw from. So I'm talking to some of them, like I've heard some of them can be friendly. I think one of them's on this panel. So hopefully they'll be able to like maybe tell you some things about the futures in their areas, and you can kind of work out from there if you like it. Sometimes you try something because you like the people teaching it as well. And at school, your teachers always told you, don't go do this subject just because your friends do it. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because I actually got into computing because I like video games, and my friends are all doing this computing thing. I was gonna become a vet and was studying zoology and things. And I just went and tried some coding courses, and I was like, hey, this is awesome. I'm going to continue doing this. So sometimes seeing what your friends are doing, because you like them and they're pretty cool, so maybe what they're doing can be pretty cool too.
All right, thank you. Just before we wrap up, and I'm realising it's getting a little late, does anybody here have any questions? Yeah, down there.
I was sort of going to follow on from the point of how important what you study is. Was raised earlier. In terms of an industry perspective, is there sort of any real advantage to doing further study after a degree, such as a master's or a PhD, or is that only really relevant to academics?
So I don't think I can talk from like a hiring stance or things, but I have quite a few friends doing masters and PhDs and things, and they can be very stressful times. And one of the things I tell them, maybe it's complete lies, hopefully someone on this panel can tell us, is that it's not necessarily going to boost your starting position in the industry, but it may be a multiplier. So I know there's quite a few big companies that will encourage you to continue your studies and get PhDs and things, and that may move you through the company, like promotions and things faster, or help you specialize into things that you want to do more in that company and be more of an expert there. So I think it can be definitely worthwhile. And you can make a career in academia as well. Like, you don't just have to go into industry. And maybe you'll find out that you actually really want to do that. There are a lot of people who really, really enjoy that stuff. I'm not really one of them. I hate writing. But it seems like a really good fit for some people. So it's a good way of exploring that option. Also, a really big advantage can be traveling. So if you're looking into visas and traveling, and just having a university degree in general is really handy for that. So a lot of countries will make it more difficult, significantly more difficult, for you to get a visa to go work there if you don't have one of the shiny pieces of paper that you'll get at the end of this degree.
I have nothing to add to that.
Yeah, that's the big difference it makes. If you want to get the E3 visa, there's 10,500 of them every year for Australian citizens to work in the United States. You need a university degree. If you watch the episode The Journeyman with Jeremy Cade in the JDP internship, he worked for Google in Japan, and he eventually got kicked out of the country because he didn't have a university degree. So he went and got a bachelor's, then a master's degree at Griffith. And he talks about the difference between learning on the job and learning as a degree, and he's done both. I'd say that unless you want to go overseas, you're probably better off focusing on something other than the degree, because as Josh has pointed out, once you get out, everybody's got a degree, and the conversation goes like this. We need someone who has a degree. Do you have one? Yes, you do. Okay. Now what makes you different from everyone else who has a degree? Because the guys without a degree didn't even get in the door. So you're now competing against people with degrees. So how do you differentiate yourself from those people? And it's kind of like what do you do over and above that makes the difference, really. And like being here today, that's part of it.
Alright, may as well put my 2 cents in. I considered it for a couple of minutes, going on and doing more degree, but 1 piece of paper is enough, well, 2, I guess, because I'm doing a double degree. But look, it is personal preference, personal opinion. It's what you want to do. So some people do want to get a PhD. They want to actually specifically study and research something and find out more about it. This is going back to specializing again, like that's super specializing in something, right? But I've seen the opposite in some people that I've seen that have been at a university for like 6 years, is they become stagnant and stuck in that sort of doing the same thing over and over again. Completely up to you, but in my experience in going out there, it's not really going to factor in like between having an undergrad degree and having maybe a master's degree. And again, as I think Ducky brought up, you may want to do that down the track and your employer may help you do that. But as of right now, for me in particular, I just want to get back in the industry and actually do something. I'm sick of the theory stuff. I just want to go and do it again, since I was doing that before I went to uni, so yeah.
All right, I think we'll wrap it up now. Thank you very much. Our panellists, give them a round of applause, please.